Deity mode is designed to be difficult. No one is going against that, but the most difficult choice people find making is where to settle the first turn. To be fair, it's not that important decision in the grand scale of the game. Soon you will have multiple cities, armies, builders, districts aplenty, you will be all over the map, but it feels like that first turn is really important, and there is good reason to that. The decision of whether to settle in place, to move, or even to delay settling the first few turns feels like it has a snowballing effect across the rest of the game. Where you settle depends on what tiles are around you, what sort of victory condition you're looking for, and what civ you're playing as, and there's a lot that goes on in your head. What we're going to be doing is going through a good selection of starts just to show you my thinking, some of the options, and some of the examples as to what we could or couldn't do. Settling in place is often what people want to do. It is the default reaction. Normally, when the game spawns you in, it puts you in a place that the game believes is a good settling location. There are algorithms that run through the game that dictate luxuries, fresh water, availability of certain resources, dependent on which civ you're playing, and then it spawns you onto the map. Hey presto, you should be in the best place. Well, you do tend to settle in place more often than not, but there are multiple reasons why you might move first turn. The availability of fresh water is one of the main ones. The settler lens is a fantastic way of looking at this. Not settling on fresh water knocks a whopping 2 housing off your initial capital. It makes a huge difference to the early game ability to grow your city, and something you really need to consider. If, for instance, I had spawned a tile below, I would want to consider moving towards the river, for instance, because that gives a huge amount of extra housing. Settling over on this zero, no water, sort of backwater over here is also going to put me massively back. To put it in context, the capital will start with 6 housing. 6 housing if it's on freshwater, 4 if it's on the coast. That means I can get effectively to 5 population without there being an issue, or 3 if it's on the coast. That's not much. Yeah, that really isn't much. A 3 population capital is going to be a big deal, and you're going to have to go down granary, you're going to have to improve a lot of fishing boats, a lot of farms, a lot of plantations, a lot of pastures, a lot of camps in order to get your housing up. Avoiding bad starts is often a very sensible route as well. You can see this start has got a bit of everything. It's got floodplain, it's got regular grassland, it's got regular plains, we have tundra, we have hills, and we have snow, as well as a coastal and river start. So avoiding a bad start it's sort of essentially, let's say we got spawned in the middle of tundra, in the middle of desert. That's never good. You don't really want to be settling somewhere where the yields on tiles are really poor. That's a really bad thing. I may also not want to settle on floodplains. Floodplains, any tile with floodplains is likely to flood, and having your city centre on one of those tiles will take population damage and district damage at some point in the game in all likelihood. So settling away from that can often be a really good example. So this, for instance, is the Tiber River, but it is a grassland hills tile. It is not a floodplain tile, so this will not flood. This one is more safe. I may choose as well to avoid settling next to a volcano. Volcanoes can provide incredibly fertile land, but if your city centre is right next to them, they're likely to, again, take district and population damage. Often, for instance, if this was a volcano over here, I might want to settle a little bit away from it. Luxuries, these often dictate where we can settle. For instance, that diamonds on the hills there means that we can't put a district on that tile, but if I were to settle on top of it, I would get the benefits of that luxury without having to improve it from turn 1. So that would be an amazing thing. I also would want to keep an eye out for natural wonders, because settling next to natural wonders can give you an incredible start, a start that will accelerate you through the game. I'm keeping an eye on district placement. It depends on what sort of victory I'm going for. Let's say, for instance, I was looking for going for a start that requires a lot of industry. Settling over on this tile to the left may turn out to be a better idea for me in the longer run, because later in the game I could put baths down from a city that settled 4 tiles away, and I could create the industrial zone diamond that we've spoken about before. Both of these would be nice +5 industrial zones. Although, you've got to be careful about planning like that too early in the game, because we've got to get through the start of the games, and if we start giving up this 4-yield tile, this sort of settlement placement, it's not really going to do much for us, because there's very few tiles apart from that that actually give us much. Wonders that you can build they also make a bit of a difference because that might dictate where we do want to start or not. Say I had Stonehenge in mind. Well, the flatland stone around here is a really good thing for that because I can build the Stonehenge in and around it in very nice places. Let's say I wanted to build the mausoleum of Carnassus. I could stick a harbour down on this tile, which is between these two resources, and stick the mausoleum on either of these tiles here. But let's say I wanted to build the Colossus. Putting a harbour on that tile is going to be a terrible idea because I can't actually build the Colossus anywhere near it. Well, actually that is a coast tile. It looks all dark blue, but it's because it's next to the ice. If there's no timeline at the present, we might as well go through a few starts and explain my reasoning because I always find it's much easier to explain once you actually start looking at it. Now this start, it's not the best. I often say what you're looking for is 4 yield tiles or more. Those 4 yield tiles are really good to work from the beginning of the game, unimproved, and they can help you get things like early game districts, scouts, and settlers when you want to expand out a little bit. The only 4 yield tiles that I can see are the diamonds, way over to the right over there, and this 2 yield tile on the grassland hills. The problem about settling on top of that is that I will lose the benefit of that 4 yield tile. It won't translate fully. And to explain, where you choose to settle makes a big difference in terms of yield. I'll show you some examples. Let's say I move my settler down to this tundra tile. It's a 1 food tile, so when I settle on top of it, the city becomes 2 food, 1 production. Whereas if I settle in place on this woodland hills tile, you can see, hey presto, it's still 2 food and 1 production, so I effectively lose the benefit of that 4 yield tile by settling in place. That's not always the case though, because it depends on what features you're settling on. The woods and the hill gave me no benefit. Settling on this stone, however, also doesn't give a benefit. And you can see as well, exactly the same thing happens when I settle in place on the wheat. Basically, the moral of the story is that settling on woods, hills, or bonus resources do not transfer the benefit to the tile you're settling on. The only thing that makes a difference is luxury resources. You can see if I settle on top of the luxury, the benefits of that luxury do transfer to the city centre. So instead of 2 food and 1 production, this is now 2 food, 2 production, and 3 gold. So settling on luxury resources does make a big difference when it comes to working out where or not you want to settle. So with that in mind, that settling on luxuries is the only thing that's going to improve my actual city centre, it makes this tile here even more important because this is the only tile that's giving me extra production. At this page, where would I put the warrior? The warrior can only move onto the settler down here where it wouldn't help, or across the river. So across the river is what I would do to give me a little bit more visibility. You can see as well, there's an attraction drawing me to the left because settling on the coast gives me the Eureka for sailing, which does help quite a lot. It's also a luxury, so getting a sailing boat on that, getting galleys out will help me explore the map a lot. Galleys are very, 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 very good to explore around the map, especially if you end up getting foreign trade and maritime industries up really quickly, because those things can be built quickly. Unlike scouts, they also remain relevant for large chunks of the game. I mean, flatland stone and tundra forest is doing nothing for me. The actual presence of the tundra down here, I can't even really go for Dance of the Aurora because it's only 2 tiles wide. The snow it's just totally useless. So even if I were to put down a holy site here with Dance of the Aurora, which is the pantheon that gives me the faith adjacency, it would only give me 1, 2, 3, 4. It's good, but it's not something to base an entire strategy over. Does crossing the river help me? Well, quite frankly, it's not going to give me too much, but you can see there are 2 wheat tiles here that with a watermill will be improved for some pretty decent tiles. And actually, I've got a huge, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all of these flatland grass tiles that I can put farms on. So this could be an incredibly high populous start. Production will be my issue. I think lumber mills are going to be really important, so putting a lumber mill on this tile and maybe on the tundra down here as well. But also you can see on this 3rd string of cities, of tiles, I mean all of these are going to be high production tiles as well. Even if I don't end up keeping the sheep and I get rid of them, the mines, the lumber yards, and maybe the pasture are going to give me lots of production if I can stretch out to that far. So it's going to be a case of, do I settle here or do I settle here? This will take me 1 turn to get onto this marshland. It'll take me 2 turns to cross the river. Does crossing the river give me anything? Well, it gives me closer adjacency to all of these tiles, but it takes me out of the way of this 4 yield tile. And it takes me a little bit further away from some of the food over here. So I would be tempted in this situation, rather than coming onto the floodplains, which is just, it's going to end up ransacking my city. I think I would end up coming in this direction and then settling in place there. This would probably end up being where I settle. It gives me the sailing boost, it gives me the adjacency to a luxury, so I can improve that. It's a nice old harbour district here, and I can also be working this improved tile from the outset. We could have settled on top of that wheat, we would have ended up losing the benefit of the wheat, and we still would have had this 2-pop start. That would have put us in and amongst all of the flatland here. But I think a Pingala start, using all of this flatland tile, putting on Pingala's ability to get to Connoisseur, boosting the culture really quickly in this city, getting a huge population beeline into feudalism, you could easily start to get Rome into a big city in this location. When we look at start number 2, now this is the sort of start I like as a player. We have a lot of choppable things. Lots of rainforest, which is brilliant because chopping a rainforest gives us a lot of food and production. We've also got a lot of woods around, we've got some marsh. Not much in the way of luxuries though, so you can see they're all kind of where we're stood now on the 3rd ring. Silver over on that corner, we have tea down here, the British start, fantastic. Bonus resources as well, we haven't been gifted a huge amount. There's rice over there, there is another flatland stone, love's giving me that at the moment. We've got the cattle over in this. So the bonuses and the luxuries, we're not really looking like we're going to spring to them. Like settling in place on the tea or the silver, well, those take us away from the freshwater. You can see actually there's coastal water over here. So I can see this is the coast. You can just about see it if we zoom in. But the easiest way of doing it is just to have a look at the settler lands. This actually tells us if there's a city-state on the horizon as well. You can also have a quick look at the appeal. If there's any sort of massive appeal coming on the edges, it means there's likely to be a natural wonder somewhere. But there's nothing really huge that's going to sort of affect me here. So really I'm looking for a few things. I'm looking for 4-yield tiles. I'm looking to avoid settling on floodplain if I can. You can see there's no floodplain on this start, so this river is unlikely to be flooded. You can also see if you look at the settler tab, it would show you if it was floodplain. Just like these tiles you can see here, this is going to flood when the sea levels rise, so that's another way of looking at coast if the settler tab hadn't already told you that. So if we look at this, we're not really going to be looking to settle towards the coast, I don't think. Not when we've got all of this fresh water available to us. If you also have a look at this, interestingly the river is flowing upwards, which would indicate coast is in this direction somewhere. So the coast is up here. We've got a narrow sort of track of land, so actually settling in this sort of rough valley is going to give our capital the biggest amount of space it can get in order to grow and prosper. 4-yield tiles, well, there's a couple. There's some here, there's literally what I'm stood on, there's one over in this direction, there's 2 over on this corner, but there's a lot of choppable land. I mean, there's a lot of flat land once the rainforest has been chopped down to make lots of farmyard, there's hills for production. It's not the biggest food start in the world, but with trade routes you could get the industry going in this city pretty quickly. Crossing the river in order to settle on top of the stone, but it gets rid of the stone, which means we couldn't then chop it down. This is a very Magnus start, by the way. There's a lot of chopping stuff here. Yeah, I mean, it would give us the 4-yield tile, but it kind of pushes us away from this one. The computer thinks that I should settle over in this direction, which is intriguing. That would take us 1, 2, 3, 4 tiles to settle, 4 turns to settle, so I'm not entirely sure about that. Settling up to the top right actually gives us access to 2 4-yield tiles, but it would take a move off. So I would be tempted, I think, to move 1 to the right. We'll just have a quick look at the top of this. Like, yeah, you can see there's nothing else that's sort of making me want to come up to the marsh. So I think we'll settle in place there, and that would be a fantastic capital location. Again, this looks like an amazingly choppable start, but this is what I was talking about. Beware the mountain of the fire, the volcano. If I were to settle my city here in place, not only am I getting rid of this lovely 4-yield tile, but I would just get melted eventually. In terms of other 4-yield tiles, well, we've actually got rice, we've got a 4-yield hills woods tile. This with a lumber mill would be on 5 production before you know it. That would be an amazingly capable and brilliant tile to work. But where else do we move? Well, we could go up to the right in order to follow this river, but again that gives us volcano problems. Up and left is not a bad shout actually, although this is plains floodplains. Do you see? If we go onto the settler, you can see that this is a floodplain tile. So in the same way that I want to get away from the eruption of the volcano, I wouldn't necessarily want to put myself onto flooding if I could help it. A city that can flood is not a bad thing necessarily, but it's not something I would want to necessarily go to. Down and left gives us this 4-yield tile. There's this within range. There's a lot of 4-yield tiles that I could do. I could actually move all the way down to here. Let's just move my warrior just to see what's going on. Looks like there's a lot of rivers going on here. Citrus, that's all great. But I think for me, instead of moving and settling, I'm going to move to this tile. Now, the reason I will do that is because then I can settle in place on the luxury. That means instead of getting 2 food and 1 production, when I do put down my city, I get the extra culture from having sat on that. So already I'm up to 4 culture per turn. Plus I get to work this 2 yield, this 4-yield tile. I've got another 4-yield tile here, and on my outer ring, I mean, there's nothing exciting particularly, but there are other sort of things that can get me benefits. I think for me, that's a pretty nice start. I could have gone down to try and settle nearer the citrus. So if I'd gone 1, 2 and settled on this kink here, that probably would have been an alright move as well, because then I could have worked the citrus from turn 1. But for me, that's not a bad start. Interesting coastal start, this one. Again, we will have a look at the settler lens to see what sort of things we've got. And look, there is flooding, which means that the sea goes round in this direction. And actually, if we have a look at the settled tile, the river is sort of blocking it, but look, the coast is all around here. So, okay, big coastal start. We've got the single mountain. We do have rainforest as well. That helps in order to sort of keep us nice and campus friendly. There's a 4-yield tile here. There's a 4-yield tile in place where I'm settling as well. We've got 2 flatland stones, some fish resource, but no other luxury that I can see. I'm tempted just to move. I could either go directly left or top left to just see a little bit more. I think I might go top left just to see what this river is going. Actually, to be fair, I'll see through it. So let's go just straight left. Oh, there's a diamonds tile. Not with water, unfortunately. If you see a diamonds on your start, settle on it. If it's on fresh water, it's worth it. The extra gold per turn is monstrous. But you can see the river goes all the way onto this tile, and I think I'm going to settle on the stone. That would probably be my sort of inkling. That gives me the sailing boost, which means I can get that going pretty quickly. I've still got a 4-yield tile and another one within range, and it also means, but you can see it's asking me to settle on this tile. If I go down 1, I can put a second city here, and I can have both sides of this sort of start covered. So for me, that's a good looking Rome start. This time we are given the coastal start, so that's the sailing boost. We have the river, but it's otherwise a pretty unremarkable start. Food is going to be the issue for a Rome start here, plus there's nothing really choppable. We've got a couple of forests, no rainforests in this particular situation. In terms of luxuries, just the one that we can see, so this doesn't feel like as good a start as some of the ones we've seen. I do like a good rainforest start just because of the choppiness. It's really good. The only 4-yield tile really that we've got is a plains, hills, forest. Lumber mills are going to take a little bit of while, and there's no food growth there, but it will give a bit of production. Actually, this is a very production friendly start. Lots of available production here. The gypsum, again, if you see that, settle on it. It's really good, but unfortunately for us, you can see there's no, you see there is fresh water on this river, but there is coastal water on the gypsum. And there is the option of the mountain here, which means we could aqueduct over to it. It's a risky play with the capital, to be fair, a very risky play, because by limiting yourself on housing, you're limiting your entire empire's growth potential. And what would you be doing it for? Effectively to get the production and the gold from settling on top of the gypsum, 1 extra of both. It would be 1-2 turns to go towards it. It wouldn't be the worst idea in the world, but it's not particularly sensible. Just move our warrior over and see what we can see in this direction. Again, the river seems to go pretty far. It's not a bad start. I like a good base start. Having the harbour district somewhere along these lines would be good. I mean, we could go and cross over to the cattle. It wouldn't really gain us much. But I think an animal husbandry start, if we were to pick up animal husbandry, we'll knock out a builder, get these cattle going. There's nothing that really I feel like we're going to gain by not settling in place here. We could move along the river to go inland a little bit and see if there's something a little bit more exceptional, because that's the thing, there's nothing too exciting here. So for the cost of just waiting a turn. We could go and see what's in that direction. So if I push my settler inwards, I can always go back to where I am at the expense of 2 turns. It's not the worst thing in the world. Visibility is your friend at these early stages of the game, so we will do that. We're going to go and have a look and see if there's anything over there. Look, you can see now the river goes round. There is more food in this direction, but not a huge amount. All hills in this direction. That looks like desert over there, doesn't it? So, yeah, you know what? It was a gamble. Didn't pay off this time, but I'm glad we did it. So we'll move our settler back and we will settle in place as the warrior goes and treks and explores up this river. We take it. It's got a good campus start. There's a decent campus opportunity here. We've got the 2 mountains. You can put districts all around it to make a +4, which is what we need for rationalism. So, okay, it's not the worst start in the world, but it's just, it's not very exciting. Put it that way. Now this is an interesting start. If you were given this, you would look at this and think, what do I do with this? There is almost no food here. We've got desert tiles galore, but no real huge desert, apart from the fact that it's sort of scattered amongst us. There is a volcano, there's some mountains, there's the coast. Tea, but not on fresh water. Let's just have a look at the settle lens. You can see there's also silk up in that direction. No real, I mean, there's a 4-yield tile here. And then I guess the silk probably counts as a 4-yield tile as well. So, what are the advantages of moving about? If we move into this volcano tile, we would be silly. If we move down to the desert tile, what are we really gaining? We're moving away from a 4-yield tile. Doesn't seem to add too much in my head, although this desert tile is not the best. We can put a district down there though, so I'm not too worried about that. If we move to the coast, again a hills tile, nice and defensible. We'd get the sailing boost and it would put us in range of the tea from the beginning of the game. Extra science per turn would help us to get the religion really quickly. That is an option. Let's just quickly go and move our warrior to here to see what we can see. So there is a 4-yield tile over in this direction. Moving over one gives us range of this eventually. I think we're going to want to get out to sea pretty quickly on this sort of start. I think settling in here, just next to all these mountains, it's not really gaining anything. So I would settle across, I believe, in this way. Let's just move my warrior and see what we find. There's nothing really exciting. So I would plonk with this one and I'd make sure that I was starting on the T. That would give me the extra science, and instead of 20 turn astrology, I've got 15 turn astrology to get my religion. Or if you weren't going for religion, you could get a nice quick 8 turn pottery as animal husbandry or mining. We'd start that one. I'm not entirely convinced it's the best of starts, but you know, it's okay. Now check this start out. This is both brilliant and terrible start. We've got rainforest, which we like because we can chop it. We've got the river. We have a lot of mountain. Desert's not so great. That is taking up a lot of our space. But 4-yield tiles, well, we don't even need them. We've got 7-yield tiles. We've got 2 truffles over in those directions. Those are brilliant. So, advantages to staying in place. Very little. There's no decent tile for us to work if we stay in place. Moving off it would release this 4-yield tile, so that much is clear. So it's going to be a case of where do we move? I could move on top of the copper. It wouldn't give me anything for doing that, but it would use up one of these useless desert tiles, which is not ideal. Put me in range of some of these tiles over here, but it would take us away from the truffles. I want to go towards the truffles. Now, if I move to this tile, I'm getting rid of what is a brilliant holy site or campus spot. That's already a +3 for both, and can be made into a +4 very easily. So I think settling along and going in this direction has got to be the good thing. We'll move our warrior in the other direction to go and see what's there. Look, more truffles, so this is a fantastic start. Now, the question is, do I settle here and I can have 1, 2, 3 decent tiles within range, or do I settle as it's saying, on top of the truffles? I am tempted to say settling on top of the truffles is a great idea. We know the mountains are over here, so I'm going to stick to the outside ring. Look, and there is the coast. Okay, that's intriguing. So we've got lots and lots of space here. I can now settle on this river from the other direction. Is it worth getting the harbour of the sailing boost by moving 1 tile further over? No. Settling in place is great because now I get the full whack of the 1 production and 3 gold from settling on top of the truffles. That is a fantastic capital start. I've got +11 gold per turn. It is worth the 2 turns I waited to get that one. That is just delightful. You can see appeal, always keep an eye on appeal just to see if there's anything that pops up. But no, at the moment, that was pretty good. Again, this is another start where the simple answer to settle in place seems like a good one, because you've got a 7-yield coca tile, you've got a 4-yield deer tile. This is all pretty good. You've got the sailing bonus. Unfortunately, the warrior can't really do much, apart from moving to this, which is going to be better. I think moving to this spot, just to have a look and see what's down here. Yep, there's a mountain. You've got lovely 4-yield spots. You've got bananas down there. I think the obvious thing for me is to cross the river and to go and settle on top of the coca, because then you get all of the yields on your capital. You haven't got to worry about working it. There's a lovely 4-yield tile there, and you've got another 4-yield tile here that's in the second ring. So there's plenty of stuff that you can do. So I think, yeah, moving to there and settling in place on that tile has got to be good. You can see the river actually flows all the way through. There's more coca. I love coca as a starting resource. It's brilliant. There you go, look at that. Look at those yields. You've got the sailing boost. You've got a lovely harbour actually that can be popped here. There's a reef and a mountain for a nice +3 camper spot on that tile if you wanted to work that, which is pretty decent. Yeah, generally speaking, this is fantastic. Again, here's an interesting one. Lots of wheat. 1, 2, 3, 4 wheat tiles going on here. We've got some bonus resource rice. We've got some bonus resource cattle. No luxuries though. No luxuries whatsoever. Lots of rivers. And if I have a look at the settler lands, lots of floodplain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 floodplains. So there's and actually floodplains over here as well. So the options are putting lots of dams down later in the game. That's pretty exciting. I think though, I'm just trying to sort of survey what the best options are here. We're kind of on a 4-yield tile. There's a few of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think at the moment, if I move on to the floodplain, I'd be reticent to do that. Moving to the right is just a bit of a gamble, because it's no better than anything that I can see here. No, there's nothing appeal-wise that's really dragging me in one direction or the other. I'm going to move my warrior just onto here. You can see, look, yeah, there's loads more floodplain. So I think in order to sort of get everything, I'm going to move one to the left. I could cross over and try and settle here, but there's no real need to. I'd rather stay in range of the 4-yield tiles. So if I move myself to there, let's move my warrior down, just have a look. No, I think this would be the best place for me. I still have a load of wheat within range. I've got lots of space for farmland in the north, but I've got the production coming through. So hopefully some stuff to think about there. Loads of different decisions you've got to make when you try and settle first turn. Just remember, if your spot, where your settler is, seems like kind of it might be alright, don't be afraid to move, because if it was alright and the place you settle is a little bit worse, then just move the settler back and then make it your second city. You know? Life is too short. And finally, a very special shout out goes to Scott Stratton, Major King Kong, Matthew Wilkinson and Salty Tech for all of your support on Patreon, as well as everybody else who's joining the community and making this place a fantastic space to be. Thank you guys, you keep me going.